They say if you don't like the weather in New England, just wait and it will change real quick. Well, that beautiful day that you saw in Buzzards Bay on the last video, the next day wasn't so nice. We woke up to a bunch of rain and wind, and I've got a video of us sailing out of Quincy and stringing the barge out on the wire. So get to that in just a second. But I've got some house cleaning to do before that. I've got a few things I want to talk about. I want to address some questions that keep popping up on in the comments. Turn the radio down. All right. So one of the questions that keeps popping up all the time, especially after the last video, was why did we tow and then we switched to push gear and then we switched out of push gear and back onto the wire again? And there's a bunch of different reasons. The first thing that you have to consider is that where we were at the BB buoy is almost an hour into Buzzards Bay, and so getting that far up, we were able to get out of the swell that we were in before. And actually coming through the race in Long Island Sound and getting up into Block Island Sound, and especially Rhode Island Sound where Point Judith is and where there's a bunch of different waters that all meet together, it gets very lumpy. There's probably, some people say there might be 1 or 2 days a year that you could do that stretch in push gear without tearing something up. Now you will see boats that are like pin boats, and the pin boats, the ATBs that are pinned up, they can run through incredible weather, and they're definitely the wave of the future. But our boats in push gear, we have to do things, anything more than a couple feet on the side. You know, we can take quite a bit on the head, but if it's coming up like there's a big, in this case, there was a ground swell that would roll up behind you. So you'd almost look and you'd see, I should back up and say that when we got on the other side of the canal, we put it on the wire again and it was flat calm there. But by the time we got into the approach to Boston there, we had to go in, tow the wire very short to get in very close where the swell would knock down so that we could get alongside the barge, because even though there wasn't a lot of chop, there's this underlying ground swell that will just rip the push gear right apart. And so, I shouldn't say that. I should say that the push gear isn't designed for those conditions, and so we don't like to push things more than they're designed for. So that's why we did it. We also, instead of just towing straight through, the canal doesn't like you to tow a loaded barge through the canal. If you read all the comments, there was one person that even talked about so if you look through the comments, you'll see somebody actually talked about an incident that happened in the canal with another company where they were towing a barge and they towed it, according to the report, longer than they should have, and the barge actually overtook the tug and sunk the tug, and it took them a few days, a few weeks or whatever to raise the tug up and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, they don't like you towing a loaded barge. You can tow a light one through, but a loaded barge has too much energy in it, meaning that there's so much weight it's going in one direction. They want you to have a hold of that and that you can stop it if you need to and that sort of thing. So when we go through the canal, we have to be in push gear when we're loaded, and we have to have a tailboat with us just in case for an added protection. And in our case, we took a pilot with us from the canal all the way up into Boston, and that had to do with some of the people on the boat not having the recency that they needed, and it's always a good practice to have somebody with local knowledge anyway. And on an interesting note, pilots have been known to bring newspapers. This particular pilot always brings wonderful baked goods. He brings a plethora of stuff that keeps getting us fatter. But this time, he made us all happy by showing up with a 12-pack of toilet paper. So you know who you are out there. Great job. All right, so that's why we push and why we tow. And when we got out, even though it was nice on the other end, we got on the wire because we knew it wouldn't be nice when we got to Boston. And the whole thing is the whole trick is to try to get it to make the transition on or off the wire before you need to. By the time you're saying, okay, it's too much now I need to do it, it's too late by then. So the whole idea is that you do your transitions before you get into trouble. All right, the next thing was, a lot of people were asking about paper charts. A lot of people say that you like that when I do that and that you want me to do it more, and I will. When I do more of that, that seemed to work really well. That's cool. We can even do a whole video in the future of working on paper charts. I get a lot of questions of how long are we going to have paper charts, and do we only use paper charts? All of our boats have paper charts for everywhere we go. We do that no matter what. And we also have a charting service that sends us weekly notice to mariners and light lists and pilot, the updates in the pilot, Coast Pilot. And we have our electronic charts updated weekly and all that sort of stuff. We have that stuff. But it is true that 99.9% of the time we do use our electronic charts. And on a vessel like this, we aren't able to just have one. We have to and we can't have like two monitors on one computer. We need to have two independent systems. So if one system crashes, we still have the other. Anyway, maybe I'm getting off topic there. From what I've read, NOAA, who produces the charts in our area here, says that they are going to start the phase out of printing charts in 2025. That's what I've heard. We'll see how it goes. Paper charts are, when you're a mate and you have to do chart corrections, they suck. For the rest of us, they're great. They're always a good thing. If you lose all the power in your boat, so it would be nice to have a paper chart. Besides, sometimes you can roll around with when you're looking at a video monitor, you can roll around, scroll in, scroll out, and do all kinds of stuff. But for me, there's something nice about opening a chart up and saying, this is where we are and this is where we need to be, and you get your dividers and you figure out how far it's going to be, and you figure out your time. That's great. All right, so the next question I get, which is kind of surprising, I never saw this question coming, but many of you keep saying that you're surprised, or you're surprised why we only have the tow cable going to the barge, why we don't have some sort of umbilical cord, with power or data or whatever, some connection to the barge. Well, for one, it's one more thing to go wrong. For two, I don't really know how you would make that work because of the shock and the loads of the wire and the wire touching the bottom. Wires get beat up pretty bad and we have to replace them often because of all that. So I don't know how that would work. The good news is that our barges are manned anyway, and they have radios and we have radios, and we're in constant contact with them through the radios. So no, there is no connection to the barge other than the wire. There is something, if the wire breaks, all of the barges have they're required to have a secondary bridle all set up, so that in the event that you lost, say their tow bridle broke, we got it back on the tug, but the barge is floating out there, you can still go over there. And of course, it probably wouldn't happen on a day like the last video where it was beautiful out. It probably happened in really nasty or sporty weather. So what you would do is you'd go up there and you'd throw them a line. They'd pull over a big, they'd take the messenger line to a bigger line. They'd shackle it into their new pennant, and then we'd pull that over. And if it's an unmanned barge, the last thing the guy does who gets off the barge is he throws a buoy out that tows behind the barge. And so if you guys are way offshore, maybe you're going down to the Gulf of Mexico, or maybe going around Cape Hatteras, and you see a tug and a tow, and you think that you don't want to cut in between the tug and the tow, which is never a good idea to cut in between those two. You want to take the stern of the tow. That's fine, but be advised that there may be a safety line that might stretch out for 100 yards, 300 feet behind this should be in our case, we use a red poly ball. And the idea is that if no one's on the barge to catch a line from you, you could go over and grab that ball 300 feet away from the tug. And reel it in, get the messenger line into a better line, and then you'd hook it to your line, and you'd break the wire. The emergency pickup line is fastened on a way that it can be broken loose with a lot of pressure, and then you hook up your thing and you go. All right, so that's that. Oh, here's a correction. I hadn't been through the canal in a couple of years at nighttime. I've been going through, and every time it seems to be during the day, which has been good for me. But a big thank you to James Deal. He works for the Army Corps, and I hope you don't mind me thanking you by name, but it was in the public comments, so I figured you were cool with that. Anyway, he was good enough to inform us that a few years ago, all of the lights in the canal have been changed over to LED, and for the most part they're all white, except they turn they're yellow on the south bank in the S-turns between the two highway bridges. So they still have yellow on one side as you come through the bridges, which is kind of cool. And anyway, thank you so much for that correction, and what a great idea. I wish every canal did that, because it's really cool. All right, the next thing is, oh, I forgot who asked this question, but somebody or gave me this advice. But one of you guys commented that I should check out Nomad Internet for a Wi-Fi hotspot, because I was spending hundreds of dollars on by buying $10, buying data at $10 a gig when I went over. I just want to say thank you so much. I did buy their equipment, and I installed it, and it was really easy. It's been really cool, so thank you so much. And those of you that are liking the 4K, you can thank whoever suggested that I go with Nomad Internet, because now I can afford to put big files up there and have them be a lot clearer, so that's cool. And people that were complaining about the dead cat on the microphone, yes, I'm sorry. I'm going to really work on never having that be a problem again. The new microphones have been kind of new to me. Okay, so enough of that. Now, something really cool. I have something really cool to talk to you about. There was a guy that I met, and it's kind of weird because we've never actually met in person, but we've been friends for a few years now. We met through social media, and his name is David Kapler. He is, I don't even know what his title is. As far as his title in my world is that he's an amazing photographer and a drone photographer, or aerial photographer. I don't know what you call that. Anyway, he has a great Instagram account, and I highly recommend, if you like this channel, you're going to love his Instagram. And if you go to Instagram, it's NJ Ship Spotter, so New Jersey Ship Spotter. If you go to that, and if you send him a message, say Tim B sent you over there, so that I feel good. Because not only is he all those things that I mentioned, and not only you've already seen some of his work, many of the aerial shots of our boat he's taken and sent to me, totally free of charge, totally cool guy. But he also did a couple other things that were really cool. He sent me a package right to work. He knew that I was stuck on the boat for 8 weeks, so he texted me and said, hey, how can I send you something? And look at this. He sent me a new GoPro. Amazing. A couple mounts that came with it. When I was bitching about my camera, my phone vibrating in the window, he got me a phone mount for it. And you're not going to believe this. He isn't waiting for me to get home to set up this whole merchandising thing. He already made, I don't know if you can see it, a TimBatSea coffee cup mug. Unbelievable. So thank you so much. Oh, and one more thing. He's also a star patron. So David Kapler, New Jersey Ship Spotter, thank you so much. You're amazing. And he's a good guy and a great photographer. Thank you so much. Okay, so now on to the video. Once again, you guys stay safe, and really appreciate helping me grow this channel. It's been a fun community. I hope we can keep it going.
So it's early the next morning. Sun's already go. We can only do this job. It's a daylight operations only. In other words, getting in and out of Quincy, we got to do in the daylight. So they're shutting down the lights on the barge, you're getting everything ready. If you notice, we're made up heads and tails. So while we knew we were going to get on the wire and tow this thing all the way back to New York eventually anyway, so we made up heads and tails on it and made right up to the wire right there, driving it out this way. So we're just getting underway now. Moving it down the dock. And straighten it up. I don't know if you guys remember, we had the amazing super moon. The tides were real low right here. You can see because of the way we're made up here that we're crabbing just a little bit, and that means that I've got the stern of the barge acting as our bow. I've brought it over so that it's over. It's hard to show in this the way the camera's set up, but if you balance it out right, in other words, if I get the stern of the barge just over the center line enough, I can reduce the amount of rudder I need to go in a straight line. In other words, if I just had my rudder straight and I was made up flat alongside the barge would be a resistant load in the water and want to turn to the right. But if I had the pinch, and if you guys are interested in this, some of you saw the video that I did about different makeups and tug configurations. I go into detail of adding pinch, bringing the working bow around so that it grabs some water and you get your rudder straighter and you go more efficiently through the water. And this time it worked pretty well with this. Sometimes you'll have to run with 20 degrees of rudder one way, which just means that instead of having 40 degrees on the other side, you now have 60 degrees on one side and only 20 degrees to work with on the other side. So it's nice when you can balance it out and have it right in the middle. But the camera's outside. As you can see, we're experiencing a little bit of rain. We're trying to go with a little bit of flood tide here so that it's opposing us. And this way it will help us when we get to the canal as well. We'll have a nice fair tide and shoot through the canal. And we're making our way to Hull Gut. This is coming through Hull Gut up here. You can see the windmill in the distance there. And the tide really starts to roll through here. I think before we were doing something like 8.7 knots, and then we slowed right down to I think about 5 knots, 4.5, 5 knots coming through here. You'll see looks like there's a lot of action on the water there, and that's because the effective speed through the water is still going to be at that 8 knots or so, even though we're only making 5 knots through the gut. Fantastic roads. And we make our way, actually you'll be able to see Boston Light on the left-hand side. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe with all the rain on the camera, you won't see much of anything. Anyway, you can see it's starting to get bumpy. The camera's wiggling a little bit. And my plan was to get through the last set of buoys. And not being in push gear, being made up alongside, we're able to take a little bit more sea than you can when you're in push gear. The soft lines that we're made up to have some stretch and give, so you can still kind of bounce and wiggle and all that sort of stuff. And now I'm just setting you up to show you we're through the last set. I'm going to start taking way off the barge and paying her out on the water. Now this is a different way that we do this, because what I do is we let the lines go and I start slacking off, there we go, slacking off the wire, and I start moving up the barge. Now remember, the barge is 180 degrees out of the direction that I want it to go in. So I'm paying wire out, I get past the pivot point in the barge, or halfway through, and I start moving on it and roll the barge around and swing it around. Get it behind us, keep it in the donut, pay out the wire, and we're on our way. I think if I did this all over again, I'd try to shoot it all from inside the wheelhouse so you wouldn't have to deal with all that rain. But once again, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next Tuesday. See you next Tuesday.